Hey guys, so I've just started a 20-minute game against an opponent who is rated 687 in Rapid. So I'm going to use this as an example of some very basic principles and things that you should be thinking about in your games if you're going to beat somebody rated in the 600 to 700 kind of mark. So I'm going to go for something fairly classic. My standard opening is the Scotch, but I might play, for example, the Italian game today. Okay, he's gone for the Petrov, so he's played 2 knight f6. So I'm going to go ahead and put my bishop on c4. If he captures the pawn, I'm going to develop my knight and tempt him to... Okay, right, he's gone for the symmetrical approach. This is something you quite often find. That's absolutely fine. Right then, what are we going to do? I've brought out my light squared bishop, so it's perfectly alright to play d3. I could also play d4 because he's got 1-2 attackers to my 1-2 defenders. Let's try that. Let's open up the board a little bit and keep things dynamic. I expect him to capture. One of the things that you notice with beginners is that they tend not to be very comfortable with tension on the board. And tension means that when there are potential captures and exchanges, sometimes you can leave them. If you aren't sure whether it's going to be in your favour or in your opponent's favour, or if you think that the capture will be in your favour, if your opponent captures, then stronger chess players tend to be happier with that kind of situation, and sometimes just allowing that tension to remain. Now, I do notice here that my pawn is now undefended. I could castle and see if I can tempt the knight to capture that pawn. If so, I can play my rook across to e1, effectively pinning the knight. Completely pinning the knight. This is an absolute pin. The knight cannot move legally because the king would be in check and you're not allowed to make a move that puts your king in check. Okay, he's decided to cover with his queen. Now, does this give us ideas? One idea is maybe bishop g5. That attacks the queen. The queen can't come to this square or this square because there it's covered by the knight, there it's covered by the... Sorry, bishop is covering e6, knight is covering e5, so the queen would be forced off of the e-file. If the knight captures my bishop, then I capture the queen. So I think I'm going to win material with this approach. I have gambited 2 pawns at this point in time, so I'm looking for some compensation for my pawns. Okay, this is a blunder. Knight captures queen. Okay. Guy's playing a 20-minute game. He's still got 19 of those minutes on the clock. You shouldn't be making blunders like that at 600 level. There's simply no need for it. And now my knight is in a very commanding position. I've got the knight and the bishop now looking at f7. Black's Achilles heel square. This is the square that at the start of the game is defended only by the king. So I think that is a pretty catastrophic start to the game. In addition to that, black has left his knight undefended. So a series of basic blunders here. Recapture of the queen. I've now got ideas of a discovered attack, discovered check. If I move my knight here, then that will leave black's king in check. Okay, so I've spotted a tactic. The question now is to decide, do I want to use this discovered check tactic now? If I do, then how do I want to go about it? So I'm thinking that the best move is probably to capture on f7. That leaves the king in check from the rook, so the king is going to have to move, but it can't capture on f7 because the bishop is guarding that square. If the bishop captures on f7, then the king can't go there, so the king will have to go to f8. with a bishop there. Is there any good reason for that? I don't think so. So I think knight captures f7 with check. King can't recapture, so the king has to move to one of these two squares. At which point I can grab the rook safely, and I'm in a completely overwhelming position now. So let's see what my opponent chooses to do. I think resigning would be perfectly reasonable at this point in time. I was hoping for a little bit more of a fight in this game, I have to say. But the point is that you should always be ready for your opponent to blunder. If you fall into the trap of thinking, of assuming that your opponent isn't likely to blunder, then you can miss their blunders. It's very easy to do, and people blunder at every level. You can blunder at every level depending on how quickly they're playing. I'm going to go in with a check here, so I don't immediately have to respond to the attack on my bishop. That's something to remember. So the king can come here, or there, or no, it can't go to that one because of the bishop. So he's got a choice of two. Now I might move my bishop out of the way. I don't have another good check, I don't think. I have queen to a4. Queen to a4 is close to checkmate. He would be forced to play b5, I think. So if queen a4 and then b5, I'm just going to have to move my queen again, and then I would lose my bishop. Right, so you don't want to have two pieces attacked. If you've got one piece attacked, then you either need to play a forcing move that means that your opponent cannot capture that piece, but if your opponent can respond with a forcing move of their own, like b5, then you stand to lose the piece that is currently hanging. So I don't think that's a good idea. I think I'm going to simplify. I'll just bring my bishop back to e3. If he can't exchange actually because his bishop is pinned. So in the next move I can capture with my bishop. Maybe pawn captures. He's simply in a lot of trouble now. I'd like to, if I can, maybe move this rook across so I can get my bishop onto d5. I can't protect that bishop any other way, for example with rook there or rook there. In fact, rook can go here. Rook can go here because the bishop is pinned, so the bishop cannot capture there. But in fact, oh, that was a blunder. That was a mouse slip. What I was going to say was that queen can capture there. Okay, so I've blundered a bishop with that move because I was too busy drawing on the board and accidentally made a move instead of just drawing arrows. There's only one legal move. He has to come back to d7, which point I can bring my rook in. Okay, my opponent's resigned. Okay, so let's go through the game again very quickly. Okay, e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to f6, the Petrov defense or the Russian defense, and I ignore the fact that my pawn is under threat, because if my opponent were to take, I would play knight to c3 and play like a reverse Stafford gambit. Okay, mirror image, takes, take. Okay, I don't recapture, I choose to castle. Knight takes, offering up the obvious pin, and now I realise that the queen has nowhere to go after bishop to g5, nowhere to go on the e-file. He doesn't figure that out and blunders his queen. So the game is effectively already won at that point. He pushes a pawn, blundering another piece. He does a fairly pointless capture. If I were him at this point, I think I'd be castling. Put king safety first. Okay. So this move comes with an attack on the rook and discovered check, so he loses his rook. I keep the pressure up. The bishop is pinned. Okay, this was a mistake, so it's actually a mouse slip. So what I should have simply done at this point would be to capture there, and I think that would be checkmate in one go. Yeah, it would have been checkmate. Okay, as it happened, I lost the bishop, but then the game finished again pretty quickly. So bottom line, if you're playing players who are rated 600 or you're playing somebody who's rated 1600, you should approach the game in exactly the same way. You need to take your time. I mean, this guy has completely collapsed his position, playing a 20-minute rapid game, 20 minutes on the clock, and he's lost within 4. There's no excuse for that. Okay, rated 1600, he should absolutely be aware of leaving hanging pieces. He should certainly have double-checked his queen move before he put his queen into a position where it could be taken. There's really no excuse for that kind of blunder at this level, at 600. But really, the bottom line is, whatever level you are, whatever your rating is, you need to take the time that you need to take to double-check every move. And if that means playing 60-minute games or 30-minute games or 45 with a 45-second increment, do what you need to do, okay? But you're not going to improve at chess by playing blunders and by playing as badly as that, really. I do appreciate that he's playing somebody who's rated a lot higher than him, and that can have a psychological effect on you. However, you should still approach every game in exactly the same way, with the same mental attitude. You don't have to blunder, right? Your opponent never makes you blunder, okay? It's only us that blunders pieces, okay? So hope that's a very short little example for you. Hope it's been useful for you, and I'll see you next time.